Hey everyone, this is Lucid. I'm going to be doing the national overview for Early Age Yomi. They are going to be my nation that I'm playing with in the upcoming multiplayer game. I announced it on my channel, which I don't normally do, but I wanted to play with a bunch of you guys, so hopefully you will enjoy watching this, as some of your fellow commenters will be probably smashing away at me and others. It's a very large map. We're playing with 17 nations. So will be pretty cool, and it's a Disciples game, so those can be pretty interesting. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Early Age Yomi. There's a few parts to this. One is we're going to talk about our normal roster, the things we can recruit. This is a freespawn nation that is one of the changes from Dominions 4. In Dominions 4 you had to buy all your stuff, for the most part. And in Dominions 5 they are a freespawn nation with a very kind of weird freespawn mechanic. Yeah, so we'll be talking about that, but part 2, after we go through our roster, will be what are the free spawn units, and then part 3 will be what are the units we can summon with magic gems. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we are a nation with Bakemono troops, with human troops, and then with demon elites. That is kind of how the nation rolls. We have cheap temples costing only 200, which is going to drive a lot of our free spawn production. And I think that's about it. Oh, we also have reduced income. Yeah, so we get a 25% income hit, which is kind of huge. So we only get 75% of the income we would have otherwise, and that sucks. That we do get extra gold in caves, but caves have shitty gold anyway, so unless you find a mine in there. So pretty important to look for caves and try to find mines in there. It might make up a little bit for your crappy income. Anyway, let's get through the actual units. So we have our Bakemono. They are, in general, our kind of cheap, crappy units that we can use to expand with at the beginning if we want to. They're all stealthy. They have mountain and forest survival, which is kind of nice. They have pretty high map movement, so they can kind of scoot around your empire. They're undisciplined, so you can't put them in any formation. You have 3 varieties, one with a club and furs, one with a spear and furs, and this guy does a lot more damage than the club variety. In fact, so much more, it would be pretty hard to justify buying the club variety, because these guys 10 attack, 12 damage, and these guys are 11 attack, 15 damage. Just kind of way better. So these guys are pretty solid. 15 damage is a lot, especially for like a chaffy quality unit. I mean, they're not going to be super great for expanding just because you're going to have pretty high attrition, but yeah. Then you've got these guys, which are basically 7 gold short bows. Not bad. They also have pretty high mobility with mountain survival and forest survival, and then decent map move of 14. So you can definitely scoot these guys around your empire. And they're stealthy, so you can use them to raid enemies. And versus a lot of PD, they'll do pretty good. With a few of these guys in front, the Bakemono shows with the Yaris, they'll deal with any kind of oncoming cav rushes or something like that well enough anyway. And then these guys, if it's just human troops, well, whoops. These guys, if it's just human troops, I'll pepper them with short bows. So anyway, decent raiders, or decent stealthy raiders. Then we have the Bandit, who are also stealthy. And yeah, they have a Yari, basically the same thing, except they actually have decent armor. They're a little bit more expensive in terms of gold, but far more expensive in terms of resources. So if you're resource constrained and you want raiders, you get like these guys. If you have plenty of resources, then you may consider getting the Bandits. They do have worse map move, so you will basically be, these are basically map move 1. Move 1 province at a time, whereas the Bakemono, they can, especially in Friendly Dominion, a lot of times they can be map move 2. With all of their survivals and their base map move. Okay, so that's basically the Bandit with the Yari. And then we have this guy is 11 resources, and this guy is 16. So significantly more resources, but he's got this basically samurai sword he gets to use, and a short bow, and he has decent armor. These are, in my opinion, kind of the superior unit here. They can basically take a lot of PD, sit there and shoot short bows at them, and then eventually smack things with their reasonably good sword with reasonably high attack. So very solid raiders. And so that's basically the units you can recruit. In terms of commanders, you've got this guy who has 12 map move, which is not quite as good as your normal troops, but he has mountain survival and forest survival. So if you're running around with a Bakemono, you probably want this guy. If you're running around with these guys, you could pick between the Bakemono who has 40 leadership and this guy who also has 40 leadership, but slightly better stats. A little bit more expensive, but especially if you're running around with like these archers and you have them scripted on fire, there's a pretty good chance the enemy, like PD, will be shooting back at you. And if you just have this little Bakemono chief, he can totally, bite it. He's only got 12 protection and no head protection, so an arrow can easily kill him, whereas this guy's got a hat, and so he's going to be less likely to get killed by, a stray shot. So anyway, if you're doing raiding, probably better to use this guy. You could argue this guy's just better to use overall because he has a hat, except he has really bad map move. Or no, it's the same, 12. Okay, so you could use either, but okay, well it's not quite the same because this guy doesn't have the survivals. So anyway, your choice there. The Demon Priest, basically it's an indie priest, which costs 50 gold instead of 60. Has a chance to get a very small, flavorful chance of getting a magic path, and has built-in undead leadership, so he can shuttle some of your Oni around, which is kind of nice. These kind of seem crappy, but you're going to want a few of these in your empire. They're kind of crappy little workhorses that you're going to need. They're going to put up temples for you. They're going to bless your Oni Shugo, who can't bless themselves. They're going to ferry Oni around. You probably want, quite a few of these running around doing little miscellaneous tasks every turn. But they're not great. They're not going to win you anything. You just need them to do some work. Next, we have our Namanari, however you say it. And basically, it's a Death 1, Earth 1. Death 1, Nature 1 mage. Decent map move. 16 is quite good, especially with mountain and swamp survival. These guys can kind of scoot around, which is good because this is a nation you are going to want to... you're going to want to play this nation with a lot of alteration research, and what that will give you is a pretty early swarm. And with swarm and a few of these guys recruited, that is enough to turn the tides in an otherwise close fight. So you can have these guys zip in with their decent map move to some province you're going to be fighting in, throw out a few swarms, and then boom, you're done. Alternatively, you're running up alteration. You can give these guys a Thistle Mace potentially. They can spam out Wooden Warriors, which can be a nice little mid-game kind of hold fast while you wait for other types of research to come online. The Death one is not very useful, really. Yeah, nothing too much to say about that. These are also your best researchers. 65 gold for 9 research, not bad. Next we have the Sorcerer. These are 115 gold for this old age dude. You probably don't want to recruit him year 1, just so you miss the first winter cycle where they get all afflicted. They're quite old, right? 16 out of 50 is pretty old. They're going to be pretty slow moving around, etc., due to to their old age. They come in 4 variants: Fire, Air, Earth, and Death. The Earth and Death ones, you're going to have, Earth 2 or Death 2 respectively. The Earth ones, you can do Earth Power, and then they can do all sorts of Earth things, like Blade Winds, or Strength of Giants, which is pretty nice on your little demons. Or you can do Legions of Steel, potentially, though it's not really great on this nation, I don't think. I forget how that spell works. Maybe you need iron in your armor or not, I can't remember. But might be okay. Iron Warriors, which can be pretty good if you put it on some of your elite Oni. The Death Varieties, you can potentially give them a pair of Earth Boots and a Skull Staff, and then they can summon Earth Power, and maybe if you put like Boots of The messenger on them also, you have a reasonably efficient, it's going to be 7 reinvigoration dude spamming out Horde of Skeletons, and he'll be able to make a lot of skeletons for the cost of about 25 gems. So, not an awesome use of gems, but not a bad use of gems either. Especially if you've just got, you know, those Earth Boots and Skull Staff sitting around, and there's a fight, you know, you're probably going to win, so it's not too risky with you losing the items, but you just want to bulk up your lines with some chaff, so maybe you take a few fewer losses. The fire varieties, not super much to do. They can do like Bane Fire darts. They can do some things with earth and fire that you don't want your Dione doing. Like with the fire ones, they can also make lightless lanterns later in the game. And then yeah, there's some earth fire stuff they can do, but they can make the death fire crosspath booster. But otherwise, they're probably going to be sitting in labs and researching. The air ones, again, not too much you can do. There's some things like Watchers and stuff, which potentially you could theoretically do with air earth as a crosspath. Again, theoretically, you could do Rain of Stones or something like that, which actually would not be horrible on this nation. Like, you throw in some earth boots. I forget the exact path for Rain of Stones. Yeah, so you throw in some earth boots, you could do it. You'd probably script Summon Earth Power, Iron Skin, so the caster doesn't die, and then Rain of Stones. Would not be horrible for you, because for your guys to die, they have to go through their second form, which is Ethereal. The problem is you're not going to be running Evocation very high or very quickly. And by the time you get to Evocation 7, in general, everybody else is going to have way other stuff where Rain of Stones isn't really going to matter anymore. But, again, stuff you theoretically could do. But yeah, basically, I think the Earth and Death ones you want to take out into the field and have them run around with your armies. The Fire and Air ones are kind of niche use and probably just going to sit in your lab and research until they die of old age. The Oni General is kind of interesting, very high leadership, so big morale boost to all your troops. You can put them in formations, which is nice. He's an undead leader, so he can ferry your demons around and put them in formation. Definitely your best general. You probably want to have him, or I think these guys are actually... Oh no, these guys suck as generals. So yeah, you're going to want to have this guy leading around all of your big armies. And what's nice about this Death One path is he can just sit in the back and spam out animate skeletons, and you don't have to worry about him running into combat. So that's kind of nice. And plus it will be, you know, moderately useful. Those skeletons might hit something and damage it. So all in all, a very good general. Cannot complain about him at all. He can also throw on skeletal body so that as a general he doesn't get hit by arrows and die. All in all, very, very good general. You definitely want a few of these for where you need generals. And that brings us to our first kind of thuggy super combatant unit, the Oni Shugo. These guys are pretty sick. They got Death 2, and then they've got a random of Fire, Air, or Earth. The Earth ones make the best thugs. They can do Iron Skin and Temper Flesh. Out of the box, especially if you have a way of blessing them, they can't bless themselves. So if you have a way of blessing them out of the box, they can start doing some kind of crazy things. Just taking rather large amounts of PD if you have a good bless. Yeah, they summon a few wolves at the beginning of battle. We'll talk about some of the more niche things that you can do with the fire and the air variety. Because these guys really, the fire air ones aren't really going to be able to thug on their own. All of these guys can sit in an army if you need to and just spam out Horde of Skeletons. They're not going to do it super efficiently, but they can do it some. The air ones, if you give them an air gem, they can do mist form. If you give them a death gem and you have invulnerability research, they can be mist form invulnerability. If you're fighting units without any access to magic weapons, they can kill almost an unlimited number, especially if you have Soul Vortex. If you have Soul Vortex and invulnerability and mist form, and you're fighting just like normal units, they can kill effectively an unlimited amount. You do have to worry a little bit about banishment and stuff like that, but hey. So that is air. Fire, you can do Phoenix Fire once you're very high, but in general the fire ones, especially at the beginning, aren't going to be super great. They can also do Flame Shield, which is kind of nice. If you're fighting Skelly Spam, you can do Invulnerability plus Flame Shield, and then especially if you have a decent Bless, they can just sit in the front line and let skeletons kind of blow up hitting them. So that's not bad. And yeah, basically these guys are pretty good thugs. They're missing a few things. They don't have fear, so they're gonna have to literally chop everybody to death. They have mountain survival. They can move okay, but they're kind of limited on map movement. A lot of you guys are limited on map movement. Like this guy, he's got 16, but both your thugs, you're gonna really like Boots of the Messenger. So ideally you have a Dwarven Hammer and you forge out with this chick, Boots of the Messenger, every turn as soon as you can, and that's really gonna help a lot with your mobility issues. But yeah, these guys with Boots of the Messenger become pretty sick thugs. They move around. It takes care of a lot of their fatigue issues, because they will have some fatigue issues in a long fight. That's kind of the way you'll die until you get Soul Vortex. But these guys are basically light thugs out of the box. And once you get pretty high in research, and especially if you're willing to put a few gems on them so they can get to these spells that are just out of their reach, they become pretty heavy thugs. Almost to the point with some gear of potential. They're not really, I mean, they're not super combatants, but they're kind of on the edge. Like they could kill, if they're specifically geared up for a certain type of army, they could kill that whole army, potentially, if it doesn't have a lot of mage support. And I mean, it depends, but I mean, these are like very strong thugs once certain research comes online, which means also they could kill basically an unlimited amount of PD in many circumstances. They're also Oni summoners, so just having these guys sit around, they create Oni. And we're getting to that part where we're going to talk about the free spawn, but now that we're dealing with our demon troops, because these guys are demons, so they can be banished, they do have a second form, as all our free spawn or demons will. Which is kind of nice. It's an ethereal second form. If that form dies, they're dead for good. The other characteristic of all of our demons is they cause unrest. So you don't want to have these guys, especially with their free spawn, just sitting around in high-income provinces. Bad idea. You gotta move these guys and the free spawn that come with them to other provinces that don't generate a ton of income. That's basically that. They're Chaos Power too. That's another feature of almost all our demons, so they're stronger in Turmoil. And then that brings us to the Dione. The Dione are pretty badass. They are Fire 2, Earth 2, Death 3, with a with a random of Fire, Air, Earth, or Death. All of these you already have one of, except for Air. So basically, there's the one where you're an Air random, and then there's another variety where you're Fire 3, or Earth 3, or Death 4. And then there's a 10% chance you get an extra path. Potentially it could be the same path as you get up here. That would be very, very rare. But if it is the case, you're going to be in luck. Definitely hold on to those. But in general, try to keep the ones that, like the double randoms, maybe out of combat as much, depending on exactly what the randoms are. But those are pretty rare. Probably want to use them for casting and forging. These are some of the very few recruitable super combatants in the game. They have Fire, Earth, and Death are the best super combatant paths in the game, arguably. They're sacred, so they can take a bless. They have Fear, which is really good on super combatants. They're also Oni summoners, and then they have all the things your demons have, like Cause Unrest, Chaos Power. They're demons, and they can pillage. Importantly, they're missing a hat. They have no hat on. So if you try to expand with these guys out of the box, they end up getting killed because they get hit in the head. With these guys, the Onishuga, they have hats, so they're a little less vulnerable out of the box to some of the little shenanigans that can happen. But anyway, that is that. I'm trying to think what else. Okay, so the reasons these guys are particularly good at super combatants is this opens up Fire, Shield, and Phoenix Fire, which are both very, very good on Super Combatants. This opens up Stone Skin, Iron Skin, Temper Flesh, very good on Super Combatants. And Earth Power, very good on Super Combatants. This opens up Soul Vortex and Invulnerability, very good on Super Combatants, and then also potentially Drain Life. So yeah, these guys are pretty sick. You do need to make up for the fact they don't have a hat. You can do that by casting Stone Skin, and then that will get their head protection up to 15, which is enough to ignore a lot of the missile attacks. The air randoms aren't very vulnerable to missile attacks if they put up Air Shield. The air randoms can also do some other things, like the Air Death Crosspath is pretty strong. You can do Wailing Winds or Wind of Death Traps if you wanted to. So definitely something to consider there. Yeah, I think that's covered it for these guys. Both these guys and your Onishugo have Throw Flames and Javelins. So basically, a lot of times you can just have them fire for their first attack and they'll throw these off. Sometimes you'd rather just have them rush into combat. Kind of up to you. I think it's more flavor, but kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, it's a reasonably high damage attack, especially if you're fighting things with any kind of fire weakness. That could be pretty good. But a lot of times it's better to just have these guys in earlier, spreading their fear aura out. They have kind of crappy leadership, but they can carry a ton of demons. So, for whatever that is worth. We've made it through the lineup. These guys can thug. You can expand with these guys. They kind of like it once you have a little alteration research to expand because of this head weakness, or for you to forge them some hat. But once you have those considerations, they can kind of go right away, expanding, especially if you have a good bless. We'll talk about the blesses and pretender design in the next episode, so for now, that's our roster. Next, we're going to talk about free spawn. So, you get free spawn anywhere you build a temple. You do not need high dominion score. I think you need at least 1 dominion to get the free spawn. Though it could be you only need 1, you only need turmoil. So as long as you have some turmoil, I think you're set for the to get free spawn from temples. I don't know if turmoil 3 gives you more than turmoil 1, but I know that dominion 10 doesn't give you more than dominion 1. So, and in practice with Yomi, you're gonna always want to take turmoil 3, so it doesn't really matter. What matters is you put temples in a province and you have some of your dominion there with your turmoil scales, you know, done. You're going to be getting max free spawn rate. Now, the types of... You can get quite a few types of Oni. Now, I've got all these... I've basically gotten all the units we can get, so I can just kind of talk through them. The type of Oni you're going to get is dependent on temperature scales, and the quantity you get is going to be dependent... Okay, there's a few things, actually. So, in mountain provinces... Do I have a mountain province somewhere nearby? Okay, like here's a mountain province. Okay, in mountain provinces, you can see we get a mix of these small, crappy demons with some of the medium demons, with quite a few of the large demons. And we'll talk about all the different kinds. In like a normal non-mountain province like this one... Well, like this one, you see we basically get a mix of the crappy units and the medium units. You don't get any of the big ones. So the type you get is dependent on the type of province that you build a temple in, and what the temperature scales are. So these are the kinds of the Ko-Oni you get anywhere. And you can see these are in Turmoil 3, so they get Chaos Power 3. So basically +3 attack, +3 defense, +3 strength. With the +3s, they're actually pretty decent units. They're pretty hard to hit with 16 defense. They're very likely to hit, and they do a fair amount of damage. And they have a second form. So not bad at all. They cost no upkeep. But they cause unrest. 0.1, which is not a lot, but it adds up. So these guys, decent chaffy front line. I mean, they can hit and hurt things. Cannot complain about them. Next, we have our kind of middle tier unit. And these we have 2 varieties, a cold and a hot variety. The cold variety, you only get if you have cold dominion. They have a great club, which hits pretty damn hard, 27. And then they have cold, which is another attack which they can do in melee, and basically it's going to do fatigue damage. So pretty decent against thugs and super combatants that are not cold immune. And they hit pretty damn hard. And that's basically all there is to these guys. The fire varieties are a little different. They also hit very hard, but they have throw flames, which you can argue is a bit more useful. They're going to sit there and throw these flames into combat. They have 3 rounds of it, and it's going to do 13 damage, which is not bad at all. So a nice little contingent of these guys on throw flames will do a fair amount of damage before they run into melee and hit things with their 27 damage club. So you get the green variety if you're in cold, you get the red variety if you're in fire. I think the red variety is a little better, which is argument number 1 to go heat scales. I mean, yeah. Argument number 2 to go heat scales is you have a bunch of fire magic and very little water. And then argument number 3 to go heat scales is some of your better giant kind of Oni are only going to spawn if you have fire or heat scales, and that is the Kuro Oni. So they're flame resistant. They're only going to spawn in heat dominion in conjunction with the other criteria. Like these guys will spawn in heat mountains, and yeah, so they're fire resistant, poison resistant. They have a big samurai sword. They have no armor, kind of consistent with all your other demons. They have very high defense, high attack. They hit like a freight train with this no dachi. And they can throw flames, and they have poison spit too. So a lot of times you want, like a lot of your demons, they're going to be undisciplined. So they're going to run in, throw their stuff, and then basically run out. These guys, I think because they have 5 ammunition here, if you have them combined with other things throwing their things, they're only going to throw the first 3, I think. And then I think when everybody else runs in, they'll probably also run in. But anyway, these are pretty solid. They're going to hit like a freight train, and if they're mixed in with your other chaffy things, they have a second form too, so they're not super likely to die. But again, that no protection weakness is going to hurt. These are the giant, or the large demons you're going to get, irrespective of temperature scales, the Oni. Size 3, 6 protection, 16 attack, 17 defense. Again, these are with, these are in Turmoil 3, so they've got Chaos Power plus 3. But you can see, basically, they can do a lot of damage. They've got a Javelin with 2 ammunition. So, yeah, they'll throw their Javelins and then run in and chop things up with their big weapon. Cannot complain about those guys. And then finally, we have our very rare unit that we get. And they're demons that are not undisciplined. You can see we can give them a formation, so potentially we could put them on Guard Commander or something like that. They're sacred, and they have armor. So they're a bit atypical in terms of the rest of our free spawn. You can only get these... I can't remember if these are heat or not. I think you might be able to get these either way, in heat or cold. But they're way better than the other kinds, and they're very rare. You can see, like, we get a ton of these, and we get very few of these. But if you have a decent bless, these guys can be really, really strong. Yeah, they basically do a lot of the things that that these guys do, except they have the Javelin instead of Spit Poison. But they also have armor, and they're sacred. So, pretty solid troops. And these are all your free spawn. The way it works, like, so you have these 200 gold temples, so you can spam them down. The risk of putting temples everywhere is if you don't have palisades, which the palisades do not help with free spawn rates. But if you don't have palisades, and if you're getting raided a lot, or you can't prevent raiding, then you're going to lose that $200 investment pretty easily. And potentially you've accumulated some demons in that province, which, you know, are not really in fighting shape. Like, I have a ton of demons here because I've let this practice game run for a while, but... you know, if you've got like 7 or 8 demons and somebody raids you, they're going to kill those 7 or 8 demons most likely, and then kill your temple too. So, Yeah, the other thing to think about is all your demons generate unrest. So you can see, like, this province has 60 unrest, and it's just from having these demons sitting here. So it's kind of the downside. So generally what you're going to want to do is mountain provinces are definitely worth templing because you'll get some really nice free spawn from them. Other provinces are worth templing too, but you have to make a consideration for whether you think you can really defend it from raids. And you're going to want to very regularly be pulling off all the free spawn and combining it. You want your Oni in enemy lands. You don't really want them chilling out in yours. So, you know, once you get a big free spawn economy going, you also need to have a big war economy going, because you don't want these free spawn in your own lands. And that's basically how Yoni kind of works with that. You also get the, like I said, you have the Oni Shugo, who you can recruit everywhere. And these guys are Oni summoners too. But again, they're bad researchers, so you probably want to have these guys out fighting rather than researching. But potentially, you know, you do have some of them sitting around, you know, waiting to go off to war. And if they're doing that, then you can have them generating free spawn before they run out. And that is certainly okay. One way to think about it too is wherever your forts are, you can have like some forts, especially in mountains, which aren't big income generators to start with. You can have a bunch of the Oni, you know, like 5 Oni Shugo, and then if you ever get raided, the Oni Shugo can kind of deploy out from that fort to take back anything. So that's that. Now we're going to go talk about the rest of the units we get. So we have quite a few spells as Yomi. We've got Hanya Pact and Greater Hanya Pact, which we'll talk about. We'll do that now. So these guys, your little Namanari, you can get anywhere. They're Death 1, Nature 1. If you cast Hanya Pact, you get these guys, right? So they turn into, one of these will cast it and they'll turn into this. So basically, it's +1 fire, +1 death. And that, in and of itself, is not a bad use of 6 death gems, right? Like, you can think of it significantly cheaper than a skull staff, and as a bonus, you get a fire path. The problem with this, though, is they're actually more upkeep. This is 52 upkeep a year, whereas these guys are, excuse me, 124, so you're doubling upkeep, which kind of sucks. So that would be an argument to go Skull Staff instead. The Fire Path, not super duper useful. I mean, you can do Bane Fire and stuff. But you can do Bane Fire also if you just give them a... well, okay, let's look. So Bane Fire here is Death 3, Fire 1, and it's a pretty strong spell. If you want to cast it, though, you can cast it by upgrading these guys again by casting Greater Hanya Pact, which will turn these guys into these guys, which is, again, +1 fire, +1 death. You gain a Heat Aura and a bit more HP, but your upkeep increased a lot again, almost doubled. So it's kind of like... And this is now this is like 4 times more upkeep now almost than these guys had. Like, these guys were 52 and these guys are 200 a year. So, I mean, investing a lot of death gems into this, which is gonna like hit your upkeep really hard, you need to really think about. Another option, if you don't want to do that, is you take these guys and you just give them a skull staff, and it's going to be cheaper in terms of death gems by a little bit. And they're probably going to be doing everything these guys can do. The only difference, these guys can Phoenix Power, and then do some of your interesting fire stuffs. But, you know, your Dione can also do those fire things. So, I would say the uses for this are Bane Fire casting, and then potentially for doing some things with fire. I think if you're only going to do Bane Fire casting, probably better to stick with this form, which is lower upkeep, and just throw a Skull Staff on them. I mean, you do get slightly better stats with this, but probably not worth it. Probably not worth 2 more death gems. But it depends. It could, you know, you could imagine a situation where it might work. If it weren't the upkeep increase, it would definitely be worth doing the form upgrade. The other problem with both of these forms is we want our death gems for other things, and we'll talk about that next. So there's 3 other things we can get with our death gems. We can get the Shikomi, we can get the Ghost Generals, and we can get the Gosumesu. I'm not really going to talk about the Gosumesu. Basically, you get an ox head and a horse face. These are non-sacred kind of thuggy unit, or like anti-thug units, right? They have eye catchers, which are going to scoop the eyes out of any thugs they're fighting. But I don't think these, with a lot of Oni strategies, it's not going to be the best use of death gems. Shikomi actually are going to be. It's 1 per death gem, which is a lot for a sacred unit. And these are Shikomi. They have 2 magic damage attacks, Ghost Rending Claws. They're demons, so you know, if you get Bloodlust up, they're going to be very high damage magic attacks. They go Berserk, which is going to give them increased damage once they get hit. They have decent hit points, but not great. Not great protection, kind of like the rest of Yomi. And they are sacred, so they can take a nice bless. They're fire, cold, and poison resistant. Anyway, very solid units. Yeah, they tear through stuff pretty quick. The special attack on this is they paralyze undead units, so if you're dealing with Bane Lords or something like that, they can be pretty damn solid. So anyway, that's the Shikomi. On to our next summons, we have... Oh, the Ghost General. So this is a Ghost General. They are... It's the Shura, and it's 20 hit points, 17 protection, and they have a hat and body armor, which is nice. They're ethereal, and they have fear. So, fear and ethereal are both very important for being thugs. They're not sacred, which kind of sucks. Because you probably want to take a bless with this nation, and these guys do not benefit from it. They also have Bane Blade, so they're kind of good anti-thug. So they're going to hit pretty hard. The thing... They can definitely kill light PD with just the gear they have on. If it gets to be heavy PD, they can kind of struggle when they get surrounded. I mean, Ethereal's going to go a long way, especially with 17 defense. And the 17 protection's great. But you're kind of going to want a shield. And if you want a shield, it's going to turn this into a fist, which is kind of okay if you have fear. But these guys kind of need a shield. Yeah, especially if you throw a charcoal shield or a shield of gleaming gold on these guys, they make very, very good raiders. But without that, they kind of need it. Or you can, but the risk of them dying is high enough that it may not be worth spending 10 gems. But anyway, these guys pretty solid. The problem with putting any equipment on them is when you put some equipment, basically, like, you have to think these guys only cost 10 gems. So if you put too many gems of equipment, at some point you could just have another one of these guys. So anyway, worth thinking about. But in a pitched battle, like in an army, especially if you're throwing battlefield buffs, better to have Shikomi in a big army than one of these guys. But if you need more raiders or counter raiders, pretty good to throw these guys in. So those are our death summons. We have a few more summons I'm going to show you. There's a few water ones, which I'll do next. So you can get Kappa. I think they're are they one water gem apiece? Yeah, they're one water gem apiece, and you get 3 per casting. So if you need to go underwater, there are worse ways to do it than these guys. 2 attacks, pretty good natural protection. These guys are pretty good at expanding underwater, and they have recuperation too, which is nice. So, yeah, if you get... The problem is you don't have water on this nation to start with. So if you luck into some Jade Amazons, you can start spamming these guys out and then become an underwater power. If you have enough water gems. So yeah, like a Jade Amazon plus 3 water gems a turn. You know, pretty quickly you can have a little force which is going to take over lakes and stuff, and then potentially even threaten to raid. You're not going to take over an ocean unless you have a huge water economy, but you can at least raid into the water. So the next spell we have is Contact Nushi. These guys get homesick. But anyway, this is what we're dealing with. It's a Water 3, Death 1, Nature 2 mage with Awe. It's kind of similar to the Naiad, but it's kind of Water and Death with some Nature. They can do Foul Vapors, which is kind of nice. A lot of your units have poison resistance, not your little crappy ones. But by the time you get up to like the mid-tier, these guys all have poison resistance. And then I think your Shugo have it. Yeah, your Shugo have it, and then so do your Dione. So, kind of cool. You can drop, you know, if you can protect these guys, like, they can sit behind and, I forget what poison or Foul Vapors is. Oh, it's Enchantment 5. So Enchantment's something you're probably going to want to run up anyway, and it's not very high. But to cast these, you need... yeah, Water 2, Nature 1. Which, again, your nation doesn't have, so you have to kind of luck into Jade Amazons or have it on your Pretender. But if you have it, these guys are not bad for casting Foul Vapors. Yeah. And, yeah, these guys can do a Thistle Mace, too, and then you can do Summon Naiad, which will give you a Nature 3 dude. So this is a way, if you can get this guy, this is a way to climb the Nature tree with Water Gems. But it's pretty situational because, again, without having it built into your nation, you're probably not going to have a huge water income to start with. But anyway, it gives you a way to kind of go under the seas, which is kind of thematic with Shinuyama being the next version of this nation with the the middle-aged underwater units. Okay, so I think we have made it through. Okay, no, we have one more thing. Dai Tengu, which is. We have different kinds of Tengu. We have the Konoha Tengu, which are 5 air gems, and that's going to give you 5 Konoha Tengu. And then we have Contact Dai Tengu, which is going to give you 10 Tengu Warriors, and then 15 Karasu Tengu. And then I think we have one more. Let me see. Where are you? Oh yeah, and then we also have a nature spell where we can turn nature gems into Karasu Tengu. Now nature gems, you're probably going to want to use a lot of these guys for your Dione and your thugs. But any extra you can turn into these Tengu, and we'll talk about all of them. So first, if you cast the Air 5 or the Conjuration 5 spell, Dai Tengu, it's 55 gems, and you're going to get this commander who's the shit. Plus 25 dudes. Now, this one is, if you have the air gems, is by far and away the best way to do it. I mean, these guys are only 1 per, but way better to get, like, if you say it's 1 gem per each of these dudes and you get 25, it's totally worth it to drop 30 gems on just this commander. He's pretty awesome. Air 3, Earth 1. So he can do all sorts of cool things like Flog Warriors, Mass Flight. Definitely the kind of stuff you're going to want to have. Storm Immune, which is nice. You can also drop Storm if you're worried about enemy flyers jumping on you. Mist if if the enemy's fielding a ton of archers. Really great to have this guy in your arsenal. Yeah, so I think that's basically it. For him, the types of summons you get, we'll start at the top. The Konoha Tengu, and I'm going to mispronounce all these, but they're sacred. They get 1 lightning strike, which basically they're going to throw a lightning bolt, which is going to deal 8 damage, armor negating damage, which can be pretty nice, and then they'll jump in and attack. I think if you put these guys on fire, they will do this turn 1, and turn 2 they'll jump in. I think if they're on hold and fire, they will wait 2 turns and then jump in, which a lot of times is probably what you want to do. They're flying and storm immune, so they can fly through storm if you choose to put that up with your Dai Tengu. Next, we are on to these guys, the Tengu Warriors, who are kind of badass. They now have samurai armor, so they're not going to get kind of cut to pieces in melee. They're sacred, so they'll take whatever bless you take. With Lightning Strike, it's the same deal. 1 ammunition Lightning Strike, and then a big katana. And then these guys, the Karasu Tengu, very similar to the other ones. Flying, sacred, storm immune. Basically just different kinds of armor. These guys have a leather cuirass. I'm not sure how these guys are different, actually. Yeah, these guys have slightly better stats than the ones above them, than these guys. But yeah, basically, katana, they hit pretty hard, lightning strike, they take a bless. So anyway, pretty good shock troops, and it's basically one of the things about all the Yomi nations is they have pretty good ways, they have a lot of pretty good ways to spend gems. So having a gem economy is nice, which also kind of bodes well for taking luck scales, because those tend to give you a good gem economy, especially early. Yeah, so these are basically your air troops you get, and I think we've done all the summons now. We have. There's a few other spells which I'll just talk about, which are kind of important. One is End of Weakness, which you get at Alt 6, and this is basically mass protection for only demons, but it's an Earth Path. So with this, your demons become much stronger, especially the ones which already have fire resistance, which is a couple of them, because you don't have to worry about the bark skin fire weakness that they're going to get. And then in enchantment, or not enchantment, in thaumaturgy, fire, at thaumaturgy 6 with fire we get End of Culture, which to get fire 5 on this nation, it takes a little bit of maneuvering. You need a fire 3 Dione with the fire, or with the construction 6 fire death fire booster, and then you have to make the flame helm, which is fire 4, and then once you have both those, then the fire 3 Diones can cast End of Culture. So by no means is it hard to do, but it takes some other research for prerequisites and a few more fire gems. But yeah, but basically you're going to get way more Oni from both the temples and from your generals. So definitely something worth doing. If you're going to do it and you're going to keep it up, it may be worth trying to go enchantment first and getting Eternal Pyre. This is fire 6 though, so it will be even harder to get up than the other one. Yeah, this will be hard enough to get up that unless you take fire on your god, you're probably not going to be able to do it. But if you can, it may not be a bad idea. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's about it for the national overview. So now, like, closing thoughts. Let's tie it together. Let's summarize. The things that this nation can do very well, you have super combatants, which represent one very distinct kind of threat, which are very hard to kill. You have thugs, who are going to be very, very good at cost-efficiently raiding. And then you have Oni, which you can get in piles and piles as free spawn. I mean, not piles and piles. You can get a fair amount of them. But you need your Oni out of your lands, so you need to constantly be moving your Oni towards enemy territories. The thing is, you often don't want to like super mix up your Oni armies with your Thug and Super Combatant armies, because like if the Oni rout, then your generals aren't really gonna, you're not gonna get the value for them where they kind of like endure. I think the way to play these guys is to take a bless where your Dione are good, that you think will also be good on a lot of your summoned sacred. So like these guys, all your Tengu, and all your Sukomi. And the Sukomi are arguably some of the best ones you get. Like these 2 magic attacks are pretty sick, but these guys are pretty good too. So Take a bless what you think will be good on the Dione as well as on these guys. Have a very viable super combatant kind of force running around taking things. Wherever you think they're going to move an army in to take your super combatant, you try to move all of your Oni in. The thing is, your Oni are okay if they have overwhelming numbers and they're fighting in turmoil scales. Oh, the other thing is unrest counts as turmoil. Every 15 unrest is going to count as 1 turmoil scale. So if you're in Order 3, these guys are going to have -3 to all their stats. They're going to suck. They're going to be really bad. Like, you have to imagine they're going to be like attack 9, defense 9, or defense 10. They hit for 10 damage instead of 16. They're going to be way, way worse. Like, more than half as good. Like, they're going to suck. They'll be able to kill half as much stuff, or even less. Like, a quarter of as much stuff. They're going to be really bad. But if you have a big army, there's a lot of... You do not want to split up your Oni, is kind of what I'm saying. You want a ton of these guys all together. You move them into a province. As they're sitting in there, you can either pillage, which is going to send the unrest through the roof, right? Or you can continue raiding. And as you jungle around, like moving back and forth between provinces, you'll gradually build up all the unrest in that territory until once the unrest is pretty high, you're ready to actually have like a pitched battle against the enemy, where your guys are now going to have decent stats, even though they're in enemy territory. You send in all of your little Oni dudes. Ideally, you're putting buffs on them. They definitely benefit from protection buffs, since their protection is absolute crap. They also benefit from anti-magic, which you have real trouble casting. So figuring out how to cast anti-magic would be pretty good for you. That's definitely like a major weakness of the nation, is not being able to cast anti-magic. So if you find an astral indie, you need to kind of guard it with your life. But yeah, I think it's kind of generals and, I mean, your super combatants killing unprepared armies, your thugs raiding enemy provinces, and then your swarms of Oni moving around, creating unrest and popping enemy forts. That is kind of what this nation is. You have pretty poor research. Like, you can see this is one of the few nations that gets only gets palisades. Like, we cannot upgrade this any farther. And our palisades don't give us an additional commander point. So you're like, all of your mages are slow to recruit, which is pretty freaking horrible. So because of that, you're going to have some of the worst research in the game. Like, yeah, I mean, it's going to be really bad research. The only thing that kind of counters that is you can forge outquills, you can forge skull mentors, and you can forge lightless lanterns. So if you run up construction kind of early, you can counter a lot of the weaknesses there with research, but you are not going to be winning any awards for research. So because you have so little research, you really have to focus it where you need it. Where you need it is alteration, probably first and foremost, because if you can't buff your protection, you're in trouble. Conjuration to get all of your great summons. Enchantment. You don't have anything unique here, but Mound Kings are going to be great for running your dudes around. Yeah, flaming arrows you can make use of too. As you can, if you get access to it, Aerofin's pretty good later. Mass Flight's really good later once you have your Tengu. But a lot of these things, like with air, aren't really going to come online until you have Daitengu, which requires having better research than you'll probably have. Because like, you're going to definitely need an alteration, then you're going to need conjuration, you're also going to need some construction. It's going to be really hard to get all of your research objectives with these guys. But once you have basic needs taken for, getting up in construction to open up a lot of the research boosters is probably going to be your best bet. Like maybe you go Alteration and then Construction and then Conjuration, with like maybe some minimal Conjuration just to get access to Shikomi and things like that, and maybe the Kona Tengu. But once you have a few of those, you have a Sink for your Death and your Air Gems, just with Conjuration 3, then you rush up to Construction 6. Anyway, but I think that's kind of the nation. It is a nation which is poor, does not have good research, but you have very good thugs and super combatants, and you have kind of interesting chaffy armies which you can throw around at people. So anyway, oh, and you have very good things to spend gems on. So I hope you enjoyed the national overview. I hope you're looking forward to the game, and I'll see you in that. Next episode will be national or pretender design. So see you then.